All right, this is disturbing. I was looking for ChatGPT about mud fossils and so forth, and this popped up, which was fabulous, and I'm going to go into this. It's going to go quite long, and the first 10 minutes or so are going to be about the dragon in the desert, because he did ask me that. Mel, who was the interviewer, did ask me about the dragon in the desert. I'm going to set it up with that in the beginning, and it's going to take 8 to 10 minutes to really fully elaborate that, and then we'll go into the full interview that I did with him, because he asked me a lot of good questions, and things have changed since this. This is like 3, 4, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Now, and this is only part one. I can't remember. I don't even remember talking to him, to be perfectly honest with you. This is a lot of things have gone by in the past here, and I'm getting older. I'm forgetting things. So I was really upset with Chat. They say I'm not even associated to Mudfossils. They say Roger Spur is not associated to any of these things, and I am against Velikovsky. Totally wrong on both of those things. They say, oh, I see him as a pseudoscientist that has no, you know, they say like I'm a critic of his. No, I'm not. He's my hero. I want that fixed. Okay, Mel, this is Typhon, and he is in the desert. Now, when you look, you say, oh, that's just a bunch of stuff. Well, look at his head, and his throat runs all the way down. This is strictly decaying flesh. In the early days, it ran off. But that's his throat, and this is his head, comes up right around here, and I mean, it runs forever. Now, I highlighted it in a different picture. And that's going to be, if I can ever get to it, I got too much stuff open. Yeah, I got way too much stuff open. It's running forever slow. Here's his head outlined. Well, I'm going to shut this down. I got so many things open, it's going to take forever. This is North Africa. And look at this. This is what they're looking at, these colors that are coming out of here. It's just stunning. All right, and then we'll close that up. Now, here it is on Google Earth. And here's the head I just showed you. Here's his throat, runs all the way down. And this dragon runs all the way across North Africa to here. This is the end of his tail. These are dragon scales way out here in his tail. It's going to sink in. It takes a while. I just got way too many things open. And all these are dragon scales. And that's blood running out where it's swelled down here, where he has some cuts or whatever. And it runs all the way back. His whole body runs back to here, which is his throat. Now, these are the scales of his throat that run all the way up here. In the ancient text, it said Zeus cut his throat with Zeus's great and mighty sword. All right, and this is definitely a gash across his throat. And all of the blood ran out into the desert here. The black is the vein, the red is the artery. And the rest is just runoff called effluent. Now, these are the dragon scales that protected his throat, which has collapsed. And the throat is the Draco River, or Drac Basin, or something like that it's called. These are just dragon scales. You see him running all the way up here? And this is where his throat was. And these were the protectors. Underneath here was just, they're just leaking out. This is stuff that ran off. Now his throat runs all the way up. You see it? This is all the way up, 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 up. And he spit it out, all the nasty, noxious stuff out of his throat right here, against the fish that's right below him. And you say, oh, what fish, Roger? I'll show you the fish in a second. But here's his red, flared eye, exactly what is written in the ancient text. This is Typhon. And he was the offspring of Gaia and Tartarus. And he was attacking the gods who turned themselves into animals, and this is a fish right here, a gigantic fish. You see that? And he was attacking that fish with his venom, and he did get it to some degree. All that venom coming out of his throat, and it is nasty. It comes right out of his beards. See the beards up here? See the two beards? You see how nasty that stuff is? Yikes. Yikes, yikes, and double yikes coming out of here from his beard. And the other beard goes up here and does some kind of crazy chemistry up in here. I don't know what it's doing, but it's not your average chemistry. And all of that stuff is fed from this yellow band that runs down his throat. That is the noxious, toxic stuff coming out right down here, and that comes down, and it hit this fish right here on his back. It ate right through his fin and into his vital flesh, this far down. And you can actually see the blood vessels and everything down in here because it ate right through his scales. It's some kind of like acid or something. It ate right through his scales. And what we're looking at here is blood vessels, veins and arteries, capillaries. You see the dark ones, the black ones are veins. The big red ones are arteries. The littler ones are blood vessels. When they come and they make their connection into the vein, which is the black one, they pour their contents through capillaries. And the capillaries end up discharging into these black porous veins. Veins are porous. I never knew that. I've learned so much by studying this stuff. And these are all these little tiny lines. You see these little bitty lines? Those are lymph nodes. Lymph ducts. They drag off the lymph fluid before it goes into the vein. And they recycle it up and you keep it in your lymph. And this was an attack because the acids ate right through his scales. And you can actually see the venom over here, and the lymph nodes actually working to try to absorb the venom, and they can't do it. You see here the venom's coming in? The lymph nodes are sending all these lymph fluids. These are lymph fluids. And they're trying to absorb that stuff. And it is, but it's so nasty that when it came down here, and it brought all that nasty stuff down here to the lymph nodes, it killed the lymph nodes. Because the lymph nodes could not absorb that nasty stuff. It's supposed to come in here really nasty. Well, not like this. This is just too much. And it goes in here and it gets filtered out. It comes back out nice pinky looking, but it's not. It's dead. Nothing's coming out. It's coming in and it's killing the lymph node, which now is dead. They come in through these filters. You see the filters here? Gotta wait a second. See them? They come in right through these filters, and it keeps all the big stuff out and lets it sort of, fixes it up. But it can't fix it up. And instead of coming out here nice and pink, looking like lymph fluid again, it's dead. No discharge of good stuff. And it happens right down the whole line of them. All these lymph nodes, they all died trying to protect this fish, and they couldn't. This is all sending that stuff down, kill them all. So this is pretty serious. Now, this is the thing that Mel didn't know about, and it was hard to, I probably babbled on without having something to show. And I'm sure it probably didn't make any sense, but at least now you can see what I was talking about. And you know about Quetzalcoatl, you know about Scorpy, you know about the one that's down in the South America. They're all over the place. They're just everywhere. And it's exactly what it said in the ancient texts. Virtually all the ancient texts that I can find are rooted in some form of factual truth. Okay, my friends, I was just looking up what they had to say about me and Velikovsky and worlds in collision and Jupiter giving birth to Venus and all that stuff. And this pops up. And this goes back to 2021. And it was about me and Mudfossils and Velikowski and mines in collision. This is part one of I don't know how many parts. It's over an hour long. And I am going to play it just so, because it's over 3 years it's been up here. I don't know how many hits they've had on it, probably not a whole lot. But I am going to play this so you can listen to it. It just as it seems to be just, voice speaking about, really our true history. And this it sounds pretty good. I just listened for a couple of minutes, but it sounds very interesting. And it's over an hour long. And this is by Veritas, which I like their stuff. And it's from a podcast from Veritas with Mel Hostilic, non-member feed, VeritasRadio.com. Now, I don't know what it's going to have, whether I was interviewed on here or not. I can't remember, but we'll find out. I'm just going to let it play, and I think it's just sound, so you can walk around, do whatever you want, just listen. Maybe. Like I said, I have no idea if this turns into visual or not, but right now it's just audio. Here goes.
The questions you always had, the answers you were never given, the place to seek the truth. Welcome to Veritas.
Humans have been programmed or manipulated like a camera. A camera has an aperture. The wider the aperture is open, the more light enters through the lens. Our goal on this Veritas platform has always been to open our proverbial mental aperture so we can let new knowledge in. But first, in order to let new knowledge in, we must leave our preconceived notions out. We must fight our cognitive dissonance from discounting new information. If you have an insatiable thirst for knowledge, especially that which has been hidden from us, then you're in the right place. What if every rock in the ground contained blood? Tonight, we will show you a new way of thinking about the soil and the ancient creatures it may or may not contain. You will learn about the true nature of rocks, even the ones in space. Recent DNA-verified mudfossils are body parts and CAT scans that exquisitely show anatomical details. Mudfossils are perfectly preserved, mineralized, soft tissues due to continuous wet, anaerobic, mud-packed conditions. You will learn how to identify these mudfossils, how they came to be, and their ramifications, which are far-reaching. You will also see that Comet 67P is completely biological, and the chemistry and anatomy and gaseous emissions are unimpeachable. Open mind required, as nothing taught is correct now, because all knowledge is based on a false premise. Therefore, the universe is alive, and life is everywhere, and the earth is made of giants, exactly as ancient texts said.
Wow, this is good.
Tonight's special guest says, quote, Mudfossil University is dedicated to truth wherever it leads. Don't just listen. Question what is being said without fear of your grade, unquote.
You are listening to Veritas. If this is your first time, welcome home. To listen to tonight's full interview and all of our material, join the Veritas family and click on the subscribe button at VeritasRadio.com. You can make your purchase with a credit card, PayPal, cash, check, money order, and even cryptocurrency. We are now accepting Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum. Don't forget to visit the Veritas store for Focus Life Force Energy, MMS, CBD Pure Hemp Oil, Pure Organic Sulfur, flash drives with all our Sanitas and Veritas seasons, and other great products. And if you want to get in touch with Mel, want to be a guest on this radio program, have a guest suggestion, or have feedback, just click on the contact button of our website at VeritasRadio.com. And if you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, and share it. And click the bell to be notified when new interviews are available. And now, here's your host, Mel Hostilic.
Roger Spurr studied material sciences using experiments, chemistry, tests, and specimens. A discovery in 2012 led Roger to start Mudfossil University. At Mudfossil University, there is nothing off the table. Atomic structure, light, molecules, and every energy interaction, including the most important, which is bacteria. Yes, bacteria. Literally, all life starts with bacteria, creating enzymes, that are proteins which are organic enzymatic catalysts that break down molecules to create the products that are reformed for life. Also, ancient texts are well studied, and ancient creatures and relics are of particular significance. Rituals and deities are also fair game. Roger discovered that experts were rarely equipped to deal with anything they were not quote-unquote taught, which means they rarely exercised independent or critical thinking if they wished to remain employed.
This is outstanding. I don't remember this. Apparently I'm going to be on this podcast. I just don't remember it. But this is very good. Mel, thank you, my good friend. This is amazing. I just went to see what chat had to say about this and Mudfossils and me, and they are writing me out of the whole Mudfossil thing. They say I'm not even associated to Mudfossils. I'm the one that discovered Mudfossils. I'm the one that had a DNA test and CAT scans, wrote all about Velikovsky and how I supported him 100% in his research, and my research gives material evidence that he was correct, and ChatGPT now has me saying Velikovsky was an idiot, and but basically that's what it's saying now, that I discounted everything he said because it's just horrifying what they said about me on ChatGPT, and I want it fixed. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play this. This sounds like it's going to be very good. And in the meantime, I'm just going to have a whole bunch of pictures show up here and there of different mud fossils and things that I do the research on. So I'm just going to let it play. Here goes.
But Mudfossil University is 100% about truth and facts, wherever they may lead. You can find Mudfossil University on Facebook, and especially on its YouTube channel. And directly from somewhere...
I'm not on Facebook anymore with Mudfossil University. It's just turned into a zoo, so I really don't do anything on Facebook. Anyway, just forget Facebook.
In New England, I would like to welcome Roger Spurr.
Wow.
Hello, Roger, and welcome to Veritas. How are you?
Hello, good. Now, how are you, my friend? Can you hear me okay?
Well, Roger, you have been referred to me by many of our listeners. I've watched many of your videos, and your work is fascinating. But as I said during the intro, we have to open our mental aperture. We have to open our minds. Let's begin with your story. And how did you begin with this research into mud fossils?
Well, I've always had a little bit of a pushback against being told just to accept something. So I've always questioned, first of all, the atomic theory. I mean, I did a lot of scientific sort of stuff as a kid, just as a kid. And then when I was in the Army, I did Nike Hercules missiles, and, atomic missiles and so forth. And I just got into understanding that nothing that they were telling me in college was right, in school. And the atom is not constructed of one big gigantic proton in the center and little electrons on the outside. Just knew it would work. And I did a paper about that 50 years ago, seriously, 50 years ago. And I said, it's impossible, absolutely impossible. Well, anyway, the light theory came just a few years ago, but I've always had a streak. Let me just put it that way. I've always had a streak against being told, just accept it, don't fight it, and that's what I was always told. Now, when I discovered the mud fossils right in my yard. Now, I had, fairly good sized property. I had like 10 acres. And in New England here, in Connecticut, New England, when they made the fields, they would put piles of stone. They make stone walls everywhere. I mean, I'm all over my farm, and I had a big pile of stuff out there. And one day I'm just looking at them. I realized these are all body parts from creatures, and so I tried to engage with anyone. I mean, literally anyone, and not a single person breathing oxygen would discuss it with me. I was crazy, or in that case, well, ends up I go to Yale. well, I tried to get in touch with them, and I said, well, what do I have to do to prove this? And they told me I have to have this done and that done. I did everything, and still wouldn't talk to me. And I had CAT scans, I had DNA tests done now. Something I want to make 100% clear before we talk about this DNA. The guy that did the DNA test, I'm sure is being assaulted because I got something from him that said, if you tell anybody I said that there's giants, I'm going to sue you or something along that line. And he never said there was giants. He said what I sent him was human genetic DNA, mitochondrial human DNA that had those signatures. That's all that he said. And he did a fabulous job. It was PCR tests on 3 different specimens. All of them came back, and I knew it.
You know, I got to be honest with you. I don't remember him ever saying to me that if I told people about giants or whatever, or if I remember him saying to me that I had to be absolutely certain that I was the one that actually extracted the bits and pieces that I sent to him. So he never touched the mud fossils. I did the extraction. I drilled into them deep so they weren't contaminated. I was very careful. And he said they were dense and so forth. Now, and I also remember I did record my discussion with him, and at one point it got out. I didn't mean to put it, I can't remember how it got out, but he had heard that I said, and somebody had heard, whatever. He wanted to disassociate himself, but he said, I will stand behind the test. He said, but you have to make sure that everybody knows that it was me, Roger Spur, not him, his lab, that took out these samples. So I sent him this. Now, in here, it does say that the objective of the analysis is to perform extraction of genomic. Like, in other words, it almost sounds like he extracted the stuff. I took it out, and I sent the samples to him. But they did come back as human mitochondrial DNA. So that's all I can tell you about that. And it was excellent quality DNA from these huge, gigantic creatures, absolutely enormous. That's 4 feet wide up here. It's about 3 feet wide down here. It's a left hand. I have the thumbs and all kinds of stuff. So I was the one that discovered mud fossils, and I'm outraged about ChatGPT. Right now they're trying to write me out of it. Roger Spur's not even associated to the subject of mud fossils. That's what they say now. You see this? While Roger Spur is not generally associated with these specific topics like mud fossils, I'm not even associated to it anymore. Okay, the best thing to do is just let this thing roll, and I will leave a bunch of shots on here from all kinds of things related to the research that I do. And in the meantime, we'll just let Mel and Roger continue their discussions. This is fabulous, and I haven't listened to it. It's pretty good so far. He sounds, I'd like to get back a hold of him and do it again.
Well, they will. Because I had an anatomist look at them too. He said the same thing. Yeah, those are absolutely a long fingertip, and well, there's 2 fingertips and a long. And one of the fingertips was absolutely enormous. I mean, 3 feet long fingertip. I'm serious. And that's on my property. It's right here on my property. And the fingerprint and the fingernail are almost as good as the ones on your hand. I'm serious. And I took the DNA from up inside of where an arterial blood supply would be. Not from the surface, no little scraping here and there. And I did it very, very well sterile. I know what I'm doing. And I double bagged it, and then I sent them off, and it took, I don't know, 2-3 months to get the results. You know, because they had a special paper. Now, as far as I know, this was the first ever human DNA test on ancient fossils. I mean, on mud fossils, anyway.
3 feet.
There's nobody knew mud fossils existed. At this point, no one would accept the fact that these were literally body parts. And they are. Now it's accepted pretty well. Do you feel it's accepted now?
Well, I don't know that it's accepted by the mainstream, just like giants are not accepted, but a lot of information is out there that says that Smithsonian. destroyed all the evidence regarding giants. I don't know if that's true or not, but I would not doubt it based on the information that I received. Now, why do you call it mud fossil and not just fossil? Is there genetic material being involved?
Well, here's the deal. All of the stuff I have, virtually all of it, came from what they would have considered the Great Flood. Now, the reason I know this is because they are body parts. I have lungs and kidneys and hearts and livers and fingers and toes and heads and every single body part you can think of. I mean, and they're all over. And they were from giants all the way down to little tiny people. I have new species called no-toes. They have the toes built right inside. And I mean, there's no question that they're there. And we have them eroded to a point where you can see every little bit of what I'm saying. So it's not like I'm talking about something I can't present the exact evidence to support. So all this stuff is literally indisputable if it was looked at. Now that's the key. They can just not look at something, and in that case, I am going to consider them to accept it. If they won't look at it, to examine it, after I have DNA, I have CAT scans, I have specimens, I have anatomies, I have chemistry, because it's all the chemistry is fully understood. The ferrous oxides, Fe2O2, Fe2O3, and then all of the different trace metals and minerals in the blood. I have all of it, and it's so far proved. That's why I don't even bother to talk to them. So anyway, I have all the evidence. They have to come to me. They are now becoming pretty fraudulent, in my opinion. I would assume that. I wouldn't pay them for any education that they're presenting now in any of these wrong. It's absolutely terrible. For them not to engage is not right. Absolutely not right.
Well, when I think of academia, I think all these professors, no offense to any of them, because they're trying to do what they thought it was right. They go through many years of I hate to say it, but programming, because all they're doing is reading from a script and they're just repeating it again. Critical thinking is not enabled, is not endorsed or
allowed,
or recommended. If you exercise some critical thinking and become independently your own person, you basically lose your tenure and your funding, and then you become someone like you. You step outside and then you try to bring the truth out. But with this gargantuan system of educational prowess that the United States and Europe and the rest of the world has, in order to keep information from the public, what would the consequences be if this information you're sharing with us is true, and the world gets to know that giants inhabited this planet before? What would the consequences be to the current narrative, Roger?
Well, first of all, one thing I want to mention to you, breaking up a little bit. Am I breaking up at all on your side?
Not at all.
All right, well, you're breaking up a little bit, but I can still understand you fine. Now, let me just address what would change. 100% of everything. 100% of every single thing would change. All the way right down to literally everyone's beliefs. Because what I am presenting flies in the face of every belief system there is. And there's things that you have no idea about. I'm sure you don't. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I know you must know about the Nag Hammadi text and the Dead Sea Scroll.
Sure.
And you know when they were discovered was right after the Jews were slaughtered and renewed Japan.
Yes. Immediately after World War II, immediately after the State of Israel was declared a country. Yes.
Right. It was all falling into sort of a biblical pattern of now is the time to release this information and tell them we're going to wipe you people off the face of the planet again if you don't stop nuking each other and killing each other. And we didn't. We just got worse. It got worse until the point where it was so close to, I was in nuclear missiles myself, It was crazy. It was insanity. And no more insane could you be. And they realized how insane we were, and we're doing exactly identical to what happened the last time when they wiped us off the face of the planet. And it appears that actually did happen. And the Great Flood was the outcome of that.
Let's stay there for a moment, because I've asked many researchers if the Great Flood was a natural occurrence. Perhaps we've had other cataclysms in our history, 5. Some people say this is the 6th one. We're the 6th reappearance of humanity, based on, we had that Noah, we had and others, Adam and Eve. What do you think caused the mud flood? You're saying that it was a nuclear event?
No. Well, here's the problem. I can't tell you specifically. Well, here's the deal. I mentioned the did I mention the Copper Scroll?
No, not the Copper Scrolls.
Okay. The Copper Scrolls are the one. Now, you have the Bible, and then you have all of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi texts, which add a lot of...
I just want to make one point clear before we move forward. I went off track with him. He's asked what was the cause of it. Was a nuclear event. No, it was Venus almost hit Earth, and when it did, it was so hot it made the waters boil in the oceans, and it literally boiled the flesh off of the creatures and created what's called a red bed, which is boiled flesh and mud and muddy blood. It's just mud is nothing more than bloody eroded flesh and blood. And above that was what they call the gray clay, which is the scraps and bones and this and that. And above that was the black cap, which was the fallout of all the burning, and because the whole place went up just like a torch as this thing hit, and it boiled the oceans. So that was the real cause of this. It was not a nuclear event. I know I went off on some Copper Scrolls. I can't even remember this. I got to be honest with you. I'm getting old-timer's disease, I think. All right, so we're going to go back to this, but I hope that straightens it out. It was the impact of Venus almost hitting Earth. And at this point, I don't even know if I was talking about it boiling the oceans or not, because that was sort of a recent revelation, but here goes.
Flavor to the Bible and change a rule of this, change a rule of that. But they're not totally anything like the Copper Scroll. Now, I don't even know if this is true, but there are Copper Scrolls that were found as a result of the Dead Sea Scrolls being found. They offered $1 million for anybody to find any more scrolls. And everybody went out and looked, and this, I guess the archaeologists did discover these, and they were copper, and they were pretty kind of fragile, copper corrodes and so forth, but they could still make it out. And apparently it talks about all these things that were in the Bible, but were related to spaceships and aliens, and not like these mysterious. Well, here's an example. And this was only 3,500 years ago, when they led the Israelites out of Egypt through the Sinai. It says, I believe it's in the Bible, or I guess it's the Bible, it says, God led them out with a pillar of smoke during the day and a pillar of fire during the night, something like that. Now, in the Copper Scrolls, it says that they were led through the Sinai by a spacecraft that was capable of emitting fire and light. And
wow, I don't remember this. I'm going to have to look back into this. This is great. Here we go. and maybe they were dropping the manna to feed them. I mean, they would drop every morning. They would be there, and they just go out, collect it up. They would just bring them over here, bring a crowd down there. And why were they trying to save these people? What were they thinking about? Were they trying to just intervene and save us? Boy, this gets deeper and deeper every day.
When they talk about all of these different people, Ezekiel and all of them, they went into the belly of a beast, belly of a craft, of a silver lad. I mean, they talk, over and over talks about it. Even Jesus. That's what it says. That's what this guy says. And if anybody doesn't believe that there's aliens now, I don't know where they're living. You know, you got to do a little bit of research. That's the part people have an opinion, and then the case is closed.
Well, people use conventional wisdom. I mean, for example, during the times of Christopher Columbus, when he came along with the 3 ships, the natives in Hispaniola or Puerto Rico, they did not see the ships because they've never seen one before, and it took one of the shamans or the elders to be able to see it. So in the old days, that's why they call it the wheels of Ezekiel, or the flying chariots when they saw, like Vimanas. What would they say? And I remember Zachariah Sitchin, when I asked him, in the old days, if they had rockets, what would they had called it, 100 years ago? And he said they would have called it a big pencil. So in that time, if they saw technology that was well beyond what they had, how would they had describe it?
Well, they do pretty well on a lot of them. The wheel within the wheel, and all of these different ancient texts. If you look through them very carefully, you can see all of the it did this, and then it moved this way or that way, or he was taken through a tunnel of light, this or that. I mean, it goes on and on. But you really have to dig into this stuff. And you know about the dragon, right?
The dragon. Refresh my memory.
You don't know about the dragon. You wouldn't need any refreshing. It's North Africa. All across the top of North Africa, there's a gigantic dragon.
Are you talking about the landmass in northern Africa?
Correct.
Okay, on the coast.
The Atlas Mountain.
Yes. I've heard about that, but I honestly, again, this is beyond my aperture, and this is why you're here today. So you can explain to me what it means when they say it's a dragon.
I'm going to show you right now, and then we're going to continue back. Mel, you are doing a fabulous job, my friend. All right, so I just backed it up a smidge, so let's get back to it.
This mountain.
Yes. I've heard about that, but I honestly, again, this is beyond my aperture, and this is why you're here today. So you can explain to me what it means when they say it's a dragon.
Well, it is a dragon. You can see it, and you can see the scales, you can see the throat, you can see, I went through the entire digestive system all the way down through, and it has a cloaca, which means it's an avian creature, and not like a man or anything. It is red-blooded. It is capable of spitting out toxins, which it did to kill a gigantic fish that was just below. And I've shown this, and if you can't see it after you see the video, I don't know what to say, but yeah, obviously you haven't seen the video. Now, it's undeniable. And then it says in the ancient text, I believe it's the Bible, it talks about the Leviathan and the dragon or whatever it is, and he will kill the dragon that lives in the sea with his great and mighty sword. He will slice his throat with his great and mighty sword. And it's exactly what it's got. It's got his throat is cut, and it bled out all over the desert. And it's too spectacular for the average mind to even look at it and think about it in that respect until you're guided to see it. And then you can miss it. After that, the story's done.
And I understand that for people like you you require some visual presentation in order for people to really understand what you're saying. So I appreciate the verbal descriptions that you're providing. But if anybody wants to learn more, they can always go to your Facebook, Mudfossil University, or your YouTube channel. They can see a lot of your presentations there. But when it comes to giants, you and so many others have provided enough evidence for me to know that we had giants in the past. Question is, I've heard about 12, 13, 17 feet. How big are the giants that you're studying?
Oh, they're just hundreds of miles.
Hundreds of miles. You're talking about the size of a city?
Oh yeah, easily. Easily. Well, you know where Devil's Tower is?
Yes, that was my next question. Devil's Tower.
That's the foot of the giant. I just did a video. I put it up 15 minutes ago.
Oh?
On Mudfossil University on YouTube. And it shows the foot, and it shows the tendinous fibers, all those little fibers going up the side there. Those are tendon fibers. And if you look at it very carefully, all of those fibers have to be separated from each other for a foot to work and be able to move smoothly. So there's what they call fascia in between every one of those fibers. That's why they're separated. That's nothing to do with volcanism. It's insanity to think that was volcanism. Now, if you look up at the top of Devil's Tower, the very top, you're going to see it's all wrinkled up. At the bottom, it's nice, flat, nice, perfect hex fibers going right up, and then all of a sudden at the top, just at the very top, it gets all wrinkly. That is because that's exactly what happens in a tendon when you snap your tendon. Just look up ripped tendon, and you ripped Achilles heel, which is what it is. And you'll see it's identical. There's no difference whatsoever. And tendons have very, very, very little blood. Almost no blood at all. Like in your ankle, you've almost no blood running. And that's why you don't see a whole lot. But if you look around Devil's Tower carefully, at the very top, you'll see a few little red spots. And that's where the red is arterial blood. Black and yellow is where our stuff is yellow, and then it eventually turns black. Black is what they call magnetite, and red is hematite. Both of them iron, both of them from blood. Now, that foot, and what happens is the other foot, I can see where the other foot was, but most people are never going to see that. And here's why. Almost all the time when you see a giant foot like that, and they're everywhere. I mean, literally everywhere. And they make a perfectly flat plateau at the top because that's what's called the abrupt transition. And as you can see, the tendon snapping, and that's what happened. They got stuck in the mud as the flood came. Now, the flood is salt water of a pH that is going to be very similar to what your body is. So you're dead eventually because they're going to drown or starve to death. Now, my estimation is when you see one foot up at the top, pretty high up on the top almost, the other one will be deep in the ground because it's going to be like just totally saturated ground, be 100% mud. So one of them is going to try to push the other one up, and eventually he's going to die pushing him, and because of that abrupt transition, it's going to be down under the ground a little bit, and you may not see it at all. Sometimes you'll see it as like a patch of greenery above that sort of follows that pattern. Anyway, to me, there's no question whatsoever, and these things can be tested now. This is like before they say, "Oh, you can't test that, you can't test that." Well, now everybody's testing.
Why can't it be tested? We can literally test anything we want.
Right now we can, yeah. Well, when I did it, they said you can't do that. I said, of course you can do it. They said I got blood. I had literally, honestly, I'm not kidding you, literal blood running out of the lungs on my column. Running out of the lungs. And I saw these pictures, I saw all this stuff. I had another guy send me a picture of a one that he picked up, and you looked at it from the outside, and it just looked like a ball of mud.
It was a heart.
But you could see a little shiny spot on it. And it was Gary Evans over in England, and he was on the shore in a mud flat. And see, the mud is a beautiful thing, because mud is nothing more than flesh. That's what mud is. It's eroded flesh. So what you have is when it surrounds a body part, it is still in the, it's preserved basically because of the salty conditions it was in, and then it becomes stuck in the mud. It will eventually do what's called nucleophilic substitution.
Sure.
What that means is all of the structural components within your body parts, the structural parts, the collagens, the keratin, the fibers, let's go with that, the fibrous stuff that's in your body that makes you, stays, I'm sure I forget where I was going with this, but the collagens and the keratins and all that stuff, I know that stuff. They stay fairly the way they were or when they were in your body, but the stuff that moves out of your body is stuff that moves inside of your body, which is the transition metals, the blood, the minerals, the vitamins. All of that stuff will flow out of your body and leave your veins and arteries, and all of that stuff open. Even the intestines and the bowel and all that stuff
Lungs.
will literally evacuate in the conditions if it was extremely aqueous, a lot of water, which is this flood thing. And in certain conditions, they will become covered in mud quickly enough that they won't fall into pieces. They'll sort of stay as a semi, complete unit of a body, but they're still going to be falling apart. Salt is extremely invasive. Salt is way over to the left of the periodic chart, and it has a ton of reactivity, and that's why molecules break down, and it's...
I want to say something. I don't know if I'm going to get into it at this. I don't think I even knew about the boiling water at this point, because I'm talking about the salt being the major player in this. I believe now it was because of boiling, but this is how well preserved these were. But they were boiled in salt water, almost like you're cooking them, and all the flesh boiled off, and what you're left with was the membranes that surround it. That's why I call it fascia-facilitated fossilization. And you could take the blood right out of here. You got to drill into them. Like I drilled into there, took the blood out, had a sample for DNA, and it's human DNA. And I sent off another one just recently to see if they can tell where it was originally, like your ancestry, that type of thing, and we'll see what happens. But there's no question that's a human lung. It's not only because of the DNA, the anatomy is flawless, and it died in the creature. And how do you know that, Roger? Well, because of this. And he said, well, what does that have to do with it? That's where the heart was. The heart sits right there. And your lungs are going like this all day long, or you're not alive anymore. And right there was where the heart was. And all of this is fabric. It's like a fabric bag, and she's as flat as a pancake. And that's because it died laying flat like this, and all the fleshy stuff, everything boiled away and left these body parts that were coated with fascia. Fascia facilitated fossilization. It's keratins, collagens, and even these new species like notos. Same thing. That's a shoe. I mean, it's not a shoe. It's a foot coated by leather, basically skin. And it's even got a sole built into it. This thing's very cool, and I think it's driven by springs. A lot of work to do here in investigating what we have. The bone comes down to there. There's no question here what it is. But it's got to be examined. So anyway, let's get back to Mel. Doing a great job, Mel. I forgot this whole thing. Here we go.
It causes all kinds of separation of the fascias. That's why your fascia separates inside your body, and the lungs fall away from the kidneys, and they fall away all along the membranes.
For those who may need a little bit of refreshing from high school biology, the fascia is the material or the substance that, if you want to call it, what I'm trying to say here is what divides the muscle or attaches the muscle to the bone. Am I right?
You broke. I couldn't hear a word you say, but let me just explain to you what it is. Fascia is just like a rubber bag. Every single organ in your body and every single membrane is a layer of fascia. It's
the casing, it's the connective tissue.
Well, connective tissue is. Oh yeah, absolutely. Fascia does also go around connective tissue.
Yeah, it surrounds and holds every organ, blood, vessel, bone, and nerve, fiber, and muscle in place.
100%. And the fascia itself is in the membranes of your. Let's go into. I don't know if you want to stay on the giants, or I can tell you about, because I can tell you something about biology and about health and about
coating is fascia.
Bacteria in your gut.
Before you go there, let's stay with Devil's Tower for a moment, because I've never been to Devil's Tower, but I want to. But it was, I believe, probably 4 years ago when I became acquainted with your work. And it just coincidentally happened. I was driving from Arizona all the way to Utah, Colorado, New Mexico. And I was looking at those mountains and those plateaus and what looks to be like roots of rocks around. It gave me a different perspective after I found your work. But going back to Devil's Tower for a moment, with the advent of drones now, everybody can fly a drone. You can fly a drone on top of Devil's Tower and many other places around the world. There's these, is it hexagonal structures all the way to the top, that if you were to use a microscope and you break a tendon of a human body, for example, can you see the similarities between that and what we see on top of, or on the sides, if you will, of Devil's Tower and some other structures?
Absolutely.
100%. It's identical. It's identical. I show that. All you have to do is look up tendon fibrils and look up images, and it'll show you a whole slew of them, and they come down. And I show this on my stuff. Yeah,
hold on, let me show you this, because this is too cool to miss. Now check this out. He's asking about the tendon hex fibers, and here they are. Not only that, they come down in a rope. They call it a rope tendon, and then it breaks off into segments. And some of them are square, some of them end up going round, and then they go hex. And then they go into little bitty fibers, and they go little bitty fibers. Now don't forget, you're talking about one of these breaks off in a big chunk. These are the big hex ones that go running up the side of Devil's Tower. But inside of every one of these, there's a zillion of these. And inside of every one of these, there's a zillion of these. And inside of every one of these, there's a zillion of these. It just keeps going down and down and down. And the fiber, at the end of the fibrils, it's so fine, you couldn't even imagine more tiny little bits and pieces coming out of here. Because think of how many times you're transitioning into a tinier bundle. And it ends up being a fiber that is so fine, it's beyond belief. This is why tendons are so tough. That's the end of these fibrils. And on the end of every single one of these little tiny hair-like things, there's a little tiny ball. It's an enthesis, and that is what locks it in. You could pull on that for... Normally they'll snap rather than come out of their locked-in position. Okay, now this is going kind of exceptionally long, so I may break this into two parts. So I just went back a second. Now let's play this, and I think I've shown you.
Colorado, New Mexico. And I was looking at those mountains and those plateaus and what looks to be like roots of rocks around. It gave me a different perspective after I found your work. But going back to Devil's Tower for a moment, with the advent of drones now, everybody can fly a drone. You can fly a drone on top of Devil's Tower and many other places around the world. There's these, is it hexagonal structures all the way to the top that if you were to use a microscope and you break a tendon of a human body, for example, can you see the similarities between that and what we see on top of, or on the sides, if you will, of Devil's Tower and some other structures?
100%. It's identical. It's identical. I show that. If all you have to do is look up tendon fibrils and look up images, and it'll show you a whole slew of them, and they come down. And I show this on my stuff. Yeah, it's exactly identical. And Giant's Causeway is nothing more than a giant creature. That is a creature that has nothing to do with building a road. Giant's Causeway, all of that hex fibers are tendinous fibers. And then there's other ones that are muscle. The tendon ones are continuous and they don't have little separations in them. The muscle ones are what they
Hold on one second.
Sarcomeres. And they look...
I was wrong. I was wrong about that. They both have breaks in them, muscles and tendon. Now I have these shots here. All right, here's the two of them. Here is, I show this as muscle. That is not muscle, this is tendon. And that's why those tendons broke flat off like that. And you could see the little fibers down. And they break flat, see it? It breaks flat off like that in a certain case. This is, almost all of the stuff that I show is from, injuries to people. So, but anyway, these are all the different colors of the fibers in there, which means they're a different chemistry, which means they're a different strength, a tensile strength to these. And they're just intertwined like unbelievable. And see, in each one of these blocks, there's probably 10,000 more fibers. Remember, I showed you what it looks like. Now, that's tendon. I was wrong. All right? This is not muscle, it's tendon. This is muscle. Wherever your muscle went to. Where did you go, muscle? Here it is. This is what muscle looks like. These are sarcomeres. You see these little things? They also break off flat, too. But they're a whole different structure than the tendon. Just, they do both break off flat, but the muscle has connective tissue and it pinches in and out. The tendon is just a block, and block after block after block, and they have just enough little tiny bit of give to them so that they really can hold up good. And there's so many fibers that if you lost a few, I don't think it would be the end of the world. But there's just the tiniest little give here. These are not sarcomeres, but boy, they're similar to sarcomeres. I think I have sarcomeres shown somewhere here. Well, I wanted to know, what was chat saying that I claimed in my book about Velikovsky and mines in collision? Because I wrote that book in 2015 about Mudfossils and Velikovsky and mines. The human mind is in collision with this problem. Velikovsky was right. It says, it seems there may be some confusion about the specific book you're referring to. It doesn't appear to be well-known work by Roger Spurr titled Mudfossils, Velikovsky, and Mines in Collision. However, there are notable references to Roger Spurr in relation to Immanuel Velikovsky as well as to Mudfossils. References which are sometimes linked to claims of ancient catastrophe. Now listen to this. He wrote Worlds in Collision. I supported him 100% in everything that he said because he accumulated all this stuff about Jupiter causing the birth of Venus, which caused the cataclysms on Earth. I explain this, and we're going to get into this we're going to do the book first. But anyway, mud fossils, term typically associated with theories of certain giant creatures creating the earth, basically. You want to read this is fine. Concept sometimes intersects with alternative archaeology, catastrophism, often linked to those who support unconventional theories. While Spur is not generally associated with these specific topics like mud fossils, I'm not even associated to it anymore. I want this corrected. This is a tragedy on my reputation. This is absolute nonsense. Here's what it says. While Roger Spur not generally associated with these topics like mud fossils, of course I am. I discovered them, you idiot. It's possible there has been some blending of these themes. Well, Yale and all the rest have now figured all this out. I'm not even associated to it anymore. They were the ones that destroyed Velikovsky. I just looked up what they said about me on ChatGPT about Velikovsky and my book Minds and Collisions. They say I went against him. I said no, he's a pseudoscientist. And I am not even associated to mud fossils now. They say Roger Spur, while there's been some references to him, he's not really associated to mud fossils. I discovered them. I did all the research on mud fossils. I know more about mud fossils than any single human being that has ever breathed oxygen. Now let's get back to this. I want this corrected from ChatGPT. I am incensed about what they said about me in regard to Velikovsky and Minds in Collision. It is an insult to me. Okay, so we're about halfway through the interview I did with Mel, and it's gone quite long, so I'm going to cut it off here. But I was wondering how long it would take them for them to write me out of the entire thing when I was the one that discovered mud fossils. I was the one that wrote the book to bring Velikovsky back to life. They had destroyed him and ruined his life. He was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. #1, 11 weeks in a row, and academics destroyed him. And they have destroyed me so far, and now it really looks like they're out to destroy me because I'm not even showing up as being associated to mud fossils. They apparently own them now. This is the way it works with academia. It's not a good system. So this is the end of today's presentation, I guess. Might as well stop it here, otherwise we're gone forever. And I want this fixed about what chat's saying about me. That's not right. They shouldn't be able to say that like they're the authority and they're saying this is what Roger said. Totally wrong. Totally wrong. And before they had it right, they were saying, "Oh, mud fossils, Roger Spur." I was thinking, wow, how did they even know this? And now it's like I'm not even associated to it. I want that fixed. All right, I love you all. And spread this word around. We need to get some truth and reality. That's all. That's all I'm looking for. All right, I love you all. Goodbye.